The top stories tonight in Y News. Typhoon Ulysses continues to intensify as it threatens Quezon Aurora area. The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology warns of possible LAHAR flow as Typhoon Ulysses looms over Luzon. President Rodrigo Duterte to push the Philippines' interest at the 37th ASEAN Summit.
The Philippine government extends the suspension of the Visiting Forces Agreement by another 6 months. Senator Panfilo Lacson bears millions of pesos worth of skeleton infrastructure projects seeking funding under the 2021 national budget. And a study shows that 1 in 5 COVID-19 survivors is at greater risk of developing mental illness within 90 days of infection.
Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Wednesday, November 11, 2020. Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the country and in other parts of the world. I am Harleen Delgado.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website, untvweb.com. I am William Theo.
First in the news, Typhoon Ulysses continues to intensify as it threatens Quezon Aurora area. State Weather Bureau Pagasa says as of 4 p.m. today, the eye of Ulysses is at 60 kilometers east-northeast of Daet Camarines Norte. It has maximum sustained winds of 140 kilometers per hour near the center and gustiness of up to 195 kilometers per hour while moving westward at 20 kilometers per hour. Tropical cyclone wind signal number 3 is raised over the southern portion of Quirino, the southern portion of Nueva Vizcaya, Pangasinan, Nueva Ecija, Aurora, Tarlac, Zambales, Bataan, Pampanga, Bulacan, Metro Manila, Rizal, Cavite, Laguna, the northern and central portions of Quezon including Polillo Islands, Batangas, Catanduanes, Camarines Norte, and the northern portion of Camarines Sur, while signal number 2 is raised over the rest of Quirino, the rest of Nueva Vizcaya, the southern portion of Benguet, the southern portion of La Union, the rest of Quezon, Marinduque, the northern portion of Occidental Mindoro including Lubang Island, the northern portion of Oriental, the rest of Camarines Sur, Albay, Sorsogon, and Burias and Ticao Islands. And in Luzon, signal number 1 is raised over Isabela, Kalinga, Mountain Province, Ifugao, the rest of Benguet, Abra, Ilocos Sur, the rest of La Union, the rest of Occidental Mindoro, the rest of Oriental Mindoro, Romblon, and the rest of Masbate. While in Visayas, areas under signal number 1 are northern Samar, the northern portion of Samar, and the northern portion of eastern Samar. Destructive winds and intense with at times torrential rainfall will be experienced over Camarines Sur and Camarines Norte until tonight and over Aurora and the northern portion of Quezon tonight through tomorrow early morning. Heavy to intense with at times torrential rains over Metro Manila, Calabarzon, Aurora, Bulacan, Pampanga, and Bataan will be felt between tonight and tomorrow early morning. Meanwhile, Cordillera Administrative Region, mainland Cagayan Valley, Catanduanes, Marinduque, the northern portion of Mindoro provinces, and the rest of central Luzon will experience moderate to heavy with at times intense rains, while light to moderate with at times heavy rains will be felt over the rest of Luzon and Visayas. The center of Ulysses is forecast to make landfall or close approach in the vicinity of Calaguas Islands within 3 hours, then over Polillo Islands and mainland Quezon between tonight and tomorrow early morning. Afterwards, Ulysses will cross central Luzon and emerge over the western seaboard of Zambales tomorrow morning. The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, or PHIVOLCS, warns of possible lahar stream flow in rivers and drainage areas around Pinatubo, Mayon, and Taal volcanoes as Typhoon Ulysses creeps closer to Luzon. Kath Dumaraos will tell us why.
Heavy to intense rainfall affecting Metro Manila and portions of Calabarzon and Central Luzon due to Ulysses could generate volcanic sediment flows or lahars and muddy runoff in areas surrounding the said volcanoes, according to the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, or PHIVOLCS. The agency said that prolonged and intense rainfall may generate non-eruption lahars on major rivers draining western Pinatubo volcano, where significant deposits of its last explosion in 1991 remain on the watershed. The mudflows can affect communities in Tarlac and Pampanga provinces. Continuous and heavy rains may also wash away loose rocks or soft soil surrounding Taal volcano, particularly on the slopes west of Taal Lake, where thin remnant ash can be remobilized in streams and roads and overland of the lakeward slopes. PHIVOLCS said the lahar flow can recur particularly on previously affected communities of Agoncillo and Laurel, Batangas province. In a separate advisory, the agency also warned that rains brought by the typhoon could wash away loose material from thick pyroclastic density current deposits in Mayon volcano from its last eruption in 2018. The bulk of erodible deposits currently occupy the watershed areas of the Anuling, Miisi, Binaan, Mabinit, Buyuan, Lidong, and Basud channels. Meanwhile, around 300 families were evacuated in Ginobatan, Albay due to possible lahar flow that may be triggered by Typhoon Ulysses. Families from Purok 6 and 7 of Barangay San Francisco and Ginobatan, Albay are currently staying at Mauraro National High School. Barangay San Francisco is among the areas heavily devastated by the lahar flow caused by Typhoon Rolly. Several of the residents have been staying in evacuation centers for 2 weeks. One of the evacuees, Joan Berco, said she prefers to stay somewhere safe.
Nilikas kami dito para maiwasan namin yung tubig. Kasi marami pang mga disgrasya sa amin doon kung nandoon kami.
PHIVOLCS advised the communities and local government units in identified areas of risk to continually monitor the storm conditions and take preemptive response measures for their safety from Typhoon Ulysses. The agency also strongly recommends increased vigilance and readiness of communities in predetermined zones of lahar and related hazards on these volcanoes. Kat Dumaraos, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Some netizens claim they were annoyed by the constant text alerts from the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council regarding typhoon warnings or other disasters. Let's find out why from Asher Kadapan Jr. Asher, go ahead.
Diego talks about the text message alerts from the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council has been trending in social media. The messages provide information about impending hazards brought about by current calamities or disasters, including typhoons, volcanic eruption, among others. It provides updates and ways how to keep everyone safe from flood, storm surge, landslide, and other risks. But some netizens complain of the alarming notification sound it makes upon receiving them, especially if it comes in the middle of the night. But according to NDRRMC, this measure aims to provide awareness and increase people's awareness against any disaster.
Required po talaga na maging alarming din yung alarm to make sure mabasa ito ng tao at makapagdulot ito, maitulak sila na kumilos para masigurado ang kahandaan at ang kanilang kaligtasan laban sa posibleng sakuna.
The NDRRMC asks for the public's understanding for any inconvenience it causes anyone and explains they're only doing what is in accordance with the law. According to NDRRMC spokesperson Mark Timbal, the agency is obliged to implement this measure as a directive stated in the Republic Act 10639 or the Free Mobile Disaster Alerts Act.
Binibigyan talaga ng mandato ang ating NDRRMC through the Office of Civil Defense na magpalabas ng mga warning sa mga kababayan natin kapag may impending na hazard na pwedeng maranasan doon sa lugar na kinalalagyan po nila.
Secretary of the Interior and Local Government Eduardo Año, on the other hand, explains that persistent information dissemination are encouraged to ensure public safety. Diego?
Yes, thank you, Asher Kadapan Jr., reporting live. The cost of damages to infrastructure and agriculture caused by the recent typhoons continues to rise, but the national government assures the funds for the response to damages brought by the typhoons are sufficient. Ray Pelayo explains why.
The damage to infrastructure and agriculture caused by Super Typhoon Rolly has reached more than 17.8 billion pesos. In its latest report, the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, or NDRRMC, placed the damage to infrastructure at 12.86 billion pesos incurred in the Ilocos Region, Cagayan Valley, Central Luzon, Calabarzon, Mimaropa, Bicol, Eastern Visayas, and the Cordillera Region, as well as the National Capital Region. Meanwhile, damage to agriculture was estimated at 5 billion pesos in Ilocos Region, Central Luzon, Calabarzon, Mimaropa, Bicol, Eastern Visayas, Cordillera, and NCR, with some 65,897 hectares of farmlands affected by the super typhoon. With the effects of the typhoon, the government assures that there is still enough funds for the rehabilitation of areas severely devastated, especially in Luzon. And the RRM's Executive Director Ricardo Halad said in the program Get It Straight with Daniel Razon that the Department of Budget and Management has allotted 16 billion pesos in calamity fund and later augmented with 5 billion under the Bayanihan to Recover as One Act, or Bayanihan 2.
Base doon sa National Expenditure Program ay may increase from 2020 level to 2021. And may mga naririnig din tayo na mga pronouncement ng mga lawmakers na baka dadagdagan pa yon dahil nga sa epektong nakikita natin itong bagyong Super Typhoon Rolly.
Meanwhile, the NDRRMC continues to conduct trainings and drills, but they prohibit gathering of large crowds while some are diverted in online seminars. They also assisting communities to form their own first responders. Halad adds that initial food and financial assistance were already distributed to affected residents in Southern Luzon. And the RRMC keeps on reminding the public to implement and observe health protocols, especially in evacuation centers, to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Ray Pelayo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, President Rodrigo Duterte is preparing for his participation in the 37th Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN Leaders Summit, next week. Rosalie Cos will explain to us the details of this summit live. Yes, Rosalie, good evening.
Yes, William, Malacanang confirms the participation of President Rodrigo Duterte in the 37th ASEAN Summit and related summits through video conference. This will be held from November 12 to 15, 2020. Vietnamese Prime Minister Nguyen Xuan Phuc will preside over the summit. The president is expected to exchange views with his counterparts on the region's COVID-19 response and recovery efforts, future direction of ASEAN community building, and regional and international developments. The palace adds he will also advance the Philippine position on public health emergency cooperation, regional economic integration, the rights of migrant workers, climate change, disaster risk reduction management, counterterrorism, and the South China Sea issue. More than 10 outcome documents are expected to be adopted in the summit on the ASEAN cooperation on most pressing issues, particularly COVID-19. The president will be joined by some of his cabinet members, including Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr., Trade Secretary Ramon Lopez, and Social Welfare Secretary Rolando Bautista. Back to you, William.
Yes, thank you very much, Rosalie Cos, for that report live. Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin reveals that President Rodrigo Duterte has extended the suspension of the abrogation of the Visiting Forces Agreement, or VFA, for another 6 months. In his statement, the Foreign Affairs chief says that he was instructed by the president to convey his decision with appropriate formality. The palace has said the president's decision on the abrogation stays. It was June this year when Secretary Locsin sent a diplomatic note to the Embassy of the United States about the suspension of the VFA abrogation due to political reasons and other developments in the region. The VFA is a framework for defense forces cooperation that allows joint exercises between the Philippines and the United States. President Rodrigo Duterte has offered a reward money to anyone who could give him information on government officials engaged in corrupt activities. Rosalie Cos explains why.
President Rodrigo Duterte is willing to give 50 to 100,000 pesos reward money to casual employees of the Department of Public Works and Highways willing to give information against ghost projects in the agency. This is part of President's crackdown against corrupt officials in the government. The chief executive assures to protect the identity and security of the informants. He also encouraged them to inform him if they were being harassed or threatened.
All you have to do is to let me know. And may price ako. Pagka meron kang malaki, if it's a malaking sindikato, ghost project ni director, I'll give you 50,000. Bulong mo lang baski sino. Pag mamalaking mga contract, wag mo lang sabihin pangalan mo, ibulong mo lang. Naniluluto yan. I'll give you 100,000.
The president read out several names again or personnel facing corruption allegations in the Bureau of Immigration and DPWH. These were either suspended or dismissed by the Office of the Ombudsman. The chief executive also warned of firing and replacing all those who are involved in irregularities.
Do not ever think that you are indispensable in the scheme of things, Governor. Maraming Pilipino dyan, mga graduate na mahuhusay, na may honest. Marami yung walang trabaho ngayon. Kaya kayong taga-gobyerno may trabaho, take care of your position. Do not allow even a dent of anomaly na dumaan sa opisina mo. Kasi sabi ako, stricto na ako ngayon until at the end of my term.
Rosalie Cos, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Senate begins its plenary deliberation on the 2021 national budget. But one senator laments that there is bias in the spending priorities of the government favoring the security sector. Harleen Delgado will tell us why.
As the Senate opened its floor for the budget debates, Senate Minority Leader Franklin Drilon expressed regret that the budget for the health sector remains insufficient. According to Drilon, the budget priorities and policies should be corrected to address the pandemic, including the needed increase in the budget for purchase of COVID-19 vaccines. The House-approved General Appropriations Bill increased the proposed budget for the vaccines to 8 billion pesos, while the Senate Finance Committee earmarked an additional 10 billion pesos in unprogrammed funds. However, Drilon said that 10 billion pesos is an illusion, as items in the unprogrammed funds can only be tapped if the country's total revenues exceeded the targets. Drilon adds, despite the augmentations made on the budget of the social services sector, there was a bias favoring the security sector, noting that the anti-insurgency fund was allocated with 19 billion pesos.
The President announced that we will borrow an equivalent of 14.5 billion pesos to purchase COVID-19 vaccines. Can we not use the 19 billion anti-insurgency funds, especially that it is for the 822 cleared barangays to purchase vaccines. We ask, are our priorities correct?
Senate Finance Committee Chair Senator Sonny Angara said he is open to hear the amendments of his colleagues in improving the funding for health and social services. Meanwhile, Senator Panfilo Lacson wants to realign the 68 million pesos proposed funds for multi-purpose halls to construction of evacuation centers and quarantine facilities. This as the senator bared various unfinished infrastructure projects, or what he referred to as skeleton projects, that were still seeking more funding for next year. Lacson cited an unfinished multi-purpose building in La Union that received over 15 million peso fund since 2017 and requesting another 5 million pesos under the 2021 proposed budget. Another is a bypass road in Cagayan de Oro that has been funded since 2015 and seeking for a fresh 414 million peso fund for next year.
We expected this project way back in January 2019. Ayan po yung itsura ng January 2019. We went back just last month, October 2020. Now, kindly spot the difference. Some naughty staff, branded it road to nowhere. Kasi wala talaga pupuntahan, Mr. President. Papuntang bundok, nakaplano yung tunnel, inabandon yung tunnel. Pero napunduhan yung tunnel.
The senator also questioned the disparity in the distribution of funds, with some districts receiving billions of pesos.
One urban district in Davao is being appropriated 15.351 billion pesos. One district in Albay, 7.5 billion pesos. One district in Benguet, 7.9 billion pesos. One district in Abra, 3.75 billion pesos. Yun ang honor roll, Mr. President. Horror roll.
Senate President Vicente Soto III said they will tackle the issue once the DPWH is present for its budget deliberation. The Senate plans to finish the period of interpellation on November 18 and pass the proposed national budget on third and final reading on November 24. Jorlene Delgado, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
A female judge was shot dead inside her office at the Manila City Hall Regional Trial Court this afternoon. The suspect in the shooting is her clerk of court. Dante Amento tells us why live. Yes, Dante, what is the name of the victim and the suspect?
Diego Judge Maria Teresa Abadilla was declared dead on arrival at the Manila Medical Center at 3:15 this afternoon. Abadilla, 44 years old, a presiding judge at Branch 45, 5th floor, Manila City Hall Regional Trial Court. Authorities say that based on initial investigation, the victim was shot to the head by certain Attorney Amador Ribato Jr., Chief Clerk of Court at the Judge Chamber of the said court room at 2:45 this afternoon. After the incident, apparently, the suspect committed suicide using his own service firearm. Authorities added that according to a witness, Mr. Juanito Reyes, legal researcher of the said court branch, before the incident transpired, both the victim and the suspect were having a conversation about the performance of the latter, which seems unfavorable. The suspect, Attorney Ribato, had contracted the COVID-19 and was planning to file his resignation. Diego authorities turned over the investigation on the case to the Philippine National Police Homicide Section or Division for a proper disposition. And that's the latest. Back to you, Diego.
Thank you, Dante Amento, reporting live. Police Brigadier General Vicente Danao Jr. vowed to increase police visibility to maintain peace and order in Metro Manila as he formally took over the helm of the National Capital Region Police Office. Leah Ilagan will tell us why.
Police Brigadier General Vicente Danao Jr., current Calabarzon Police Chief has been appointed Metro Manila Staff Cap with the exit of former National Capital Region Police Office Chief, Police Major General SINAS, who formally begins his term as Chief of the Philippine National Police. In a turnover ceremony this morning in Camp Bagong Diwa, Taguig, they now promised to maintain the peace and order in Metro Manila.
Paano natin gagawin yan? More of the police visibility on the streets. Let us flood the streets of Metro Manila with policemen in order to ensure the safety and security of our constituents.
Danao also says he will strictly implement the war on drugs of the government. He also vowed to aggressively implement measures against airing cops.
Nakikiusap ako sa inyo, mga kapatid, let us put a stop, especially on the anti-illegal drugs. Kung meron man pa isa-isa pa sa inyo na medyo nawawalay ng landas, ngayon pa lang sinasabihan ko na tayo, the door is always open for you to live.
Danao is one of the contenders for Chief PNP post. He is a member of Philippine Military Academy Sambisig class of 1991, who also served as Davao Police Chief from 2013 to 2016 when Duterte was still mayor of the city. Leia Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Philippine National Police Chief Police General Devode SINAS assures that no major changes will be implemented in the nation's police force under his term. Leia Ilagan explains why.
PNP Chief Police General Devode SINAS will not change the existing PNP policies with the 9-point agenda of the previous Chief PNP. Instead, SINAS said they need to implement the existing PNP policy, such as focusing on the police station to sustain the government's campaign against illegal drugs. SINAS says it is important to have a strong police on the ground.
Hindi po ako mahilig ng 9-point agenda, 6-point agenda, 3-point agenda. Ako po, ipapatuloy natin kung ano na po yung mga palisiyan natin. No? Kasi pag gawa tayo ng mga kung anong agenda, lahat po yan ay na-cover. Ang kailangan natin ay i-implement.
The new PNP chief assures to treat his fellow policemen evenly.
Hindi po ako mahilig ng mga teams. Hindi po ako mahilig ng mga deltas, Charlie or Bravo. Ang tawag ko po ay Team PNP. Dapat Team PNP tayo. No? Pantay po tayo. We work as one. Kaya nga ang favorite na music ko ay Ball is Fire. Let's go team!
Meanwhile, SINAS confirms that he will not implement a major revamp but will only fill those vacant positions in the organization. One of his priority is to end the problem in illegal drugs, terrorism, corruption, and criminality. He also encouraged the public to leave the Manyanita issue to the court and give him a chance to prove himself as the Chief PNP. Leia Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Department of Health urges the public to temper their expectations regarding the potential vaccine against coronavirus disease 2019, advising the public to strictly follow the minimum health protocols still implemented in the country. Aiko Miguel explains why.
The Health Department agrees with President Rodrigo Duterte that the public should not fear COVID-19 as there are encouraging developments in the candidate vaccines of countries like US and China. The DOH says, although studies show that drug maker Pfizer and BioNTech announced that their potential vaccine has 90% efficacy, the Health Department tells the public should not be caught off guard with the restrictions still being implemented.
Napaka-encouraging po itong lumabas na artikulo about Pfizer. But of course, we have to temper our expectations. Kailangan nag-grounded pa rin po tayo dun sa realization o dun sa realidad natin na nandyan pa rin yung virus, no? At kailangan ginagawa pa rin natin yung mga preventive measures.
The DOH also clarifies although Pfizer's potential vaccine shows good evaluation, the government still has to decide whether to pre-order vaccines, which often is required by manufacturers.
As to the procurement law, yung sinasabi na bawal ka mag-advance payment, no? So pinag-uusapan po yan ngayon, and we have sought the assistance also of the Office of the President, no, para po magkaroon po tayo ng mas malinaw na direksyon kung pwede po nga natin magkaroon ng special na exemption from the specific provision of the law.
Pfizer said it will not impose a minimum volume or down payment for the purchase of its vaccine. Instead, it only requires a purchase order to make sure the country is committed to buy its vaccine. Philippine experts say that among the challenges the government's facing now is the need of a cold storage for the vaccines. COVID-19 vaccine like that of Pfizer has to be stored with a temperature of -70 to -80 degrees Celsius or -94 degrees Fahrenheit for it not to spoil.
So kasama yan sa pagpaplano natin if and when we are going to procure this kind of vaccines which requires this kind of storage. Yung pong mga dry ice, hindi po pwede. Kaya nga isa yan sa challenge eh.
Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. mentioned that the government is in talks with private sector to meet and have a cold storage for COVID-19 vaccines. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Department of Health recorded 1,672 new COVID-19 infections today, pushing the country's total to 401,416. The DOH said 31,489 are active cases or those still ongoing treatment. Areas with the highest number of new cases were Cavite with 100, Davao City with 99, Quezon City with 81, Batangas with 78, and Baguio City with 70. 311 recoveries were reported, pushing the tally of recoveries to 362,217. However, the death toll rose to 7,710 as 49 new fatalities were recorded.
A proposal to allow mail-in voting for senior citizens in the 2022 national elections has been filed in the House of Representatives. Vincent Arboleda will tell us why.
Marikina's 2nd District Representative Stella Kimbo urged the need for a reform in the 2022 elections due to COVID-19 pandemic. With the aim to allow senior citizens to exercise their right to vote without exposing them to COVID-19, Kimbo filed House Bill 7572 last September. If the need arises, the bill wants to give COMELEC the right to implement mail-in voting for senior citizens. With this, the most vulnerable sector will be protected from exposure to the dreaded disease while exercising the right. But according to Anakalusugan Party List Representative Mike Defensor, although in theory, mail-in voting has no mistake, it still needs more study and debate. House Speaker Lord Alan Velasco is also in favor of mail-in voting for senior citizens, persons with disabilities, and OFWs. He adds that there is also a need to put security features to ensure that it will be safe from fraud. Agusan del Norte 1st District Representative Lawrence Fortun also shared the idea. But Fortun is not in favor that the Philippine Postal Corporation will handle the ballots. Other than the weakening service of the PhilPost, Fortun says it is also prone to political influence. The lawmakers say it would be better for COMELEC to tap private couriers that the COMELEC has been doing. For Ako Bicol Representative Alfredo Garbin Jr., the country's current postal system is slow and weak. There are even reported cases where mails get lost while in transit, and several instances where mails are opened by the syndicate to look for money. If the mail-in voting will be implemented these 2022 elections, Garbin fears that it will instead be susceptible to fraud and delay, things that can mar the integrity of the election and its results. Instead, Congressman Garbin and Congressman Ronnie Ong proposed to conduct advance voting for senior citizens, PWDs, and pregnant women so they won't have to hustle at precincts during the election day. Vincent Arboleda, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
And for the news abroad, here's Kath de Maraos reporting live from Thailand.
Good evening, William. U.S. President-elect Joe Biden continues to face accusations of fraudulent election and denials of transition of power from U.S. President Trump 3 days after the election was called in his favor. Sonny Cos will tell us why.
The social media disinformation campaign against the result of election in favor of U.S. President-elect Joe Biden has started to trend in the past 2 days. A viral tweet regarding 14,000 dead people circulated claiming to have been able to vote in the states of Michigan and Pennsylvania. According to factcheck.org, a fact-finding nonpartisan organization, there are no substantive evidence that there were dead people voted in Wayne County in Michigan. And while there may be a very rare chance that a dead person were able to vote in Pennsylvania, this is not widespread as the viral post suggested and would not affect the current result of the election in the state. A Facebook post is also spreading regarding vote dumping in Wisconsin. According to the post, there was a sudden spike of votes in favor of Biden in the state at 4 a.m. in November 4. But the director of election from Milwaukee County in Wisconsin said that the sudden increase of voters in favor of the former vice president came in after their city reported their finished count of mail-in ballots, debunking the post's claim. President Trump's campaign continues to question the election result and promised to take legal action all the way to Supreme Court. Last night, they filed another lawsuit against Pennsylvania, requesting to halt the certification of final election results of the state. Several Trump appointees also stand by with Trump's action denying to call Biden as the president-elect. The Administrator of General Services Administration turned down requests to start the talks between Biden's transition team and the government agencies, while Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said that his department is preparing for a smooth transition to a second Trump term when asked if he is preparing for the transition of power to Biden. Sonny Cos, UNTV News and Rescue, USA. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Brazil halted a late-stage trial of a Chinese vaccine that had been considered a global frontrunner in the race to develop a protective shot for the coronavirus. Early Briones will tell us why live. Early.
Organizers of Sinovac's Coronavac trial claims that no advance notice was given to them by Brazil's health regulatory agency Anvisa or Agência Nacional de Vigilância Sanitária when the Phase 3 clinical trial of their vaccine was ordered to be stopped. The clinical trial suspension came after a trial volunteer died last October 29. Sao Paulo Health Secretary John Gorenstein stated that the vaccine on trial is safe and the death was unrelated to the vaccine. Sao Paulo's head of Medical Research Institute in Butantan stated that Sinovac's Coronavac has not shown any serious adverse effect. Brazil President Jair Bolsonaro, on the contrary, has posted on his Facebook page that the halt of the Coronavac trial was another victory. President Bolsonaro has been vocal in his criticisms of the vaccine originating from China, saying that he will not import the vaccine in Brazil. This is contrary to what Sao Paulo Governor João Doria believes when he publicly supported Coronavac trial. Many medical professionals in Brazil fear that politics is getting in the way of advancing the clinical trial of the vaccine and is delaying the immunization efforts against COVID-19, which has already claimed the lives of more than 160,000 Brazilians. Meanwhile, Sinovac has issued a statement on Tuesday stating its confidence in the safety of the vaccine and that the clinical study in Brazil is strictly carried out in accordance with good clinical research practice and satisfied all the good clinical practice requirements. Sinovac will continue its communication with Brazil regarding the matter. Brazil has 3 other COVID-19 vaccines on trial. This includes those developed by Oxford University with AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson's, and Pfizer's BioNTech. Kat?
Thank you, Early Briones, for that report. A study have found that many COVID-19 survivors are likely to be at greater risk of developing mental illness. Marvy Delfin will give us the details live. Marvy?
Kath, nearly 1 in 5 people who have had COVID-19 are diagnosed with a psychiatric disorder such as anxiety, depression, or insomnia within 3 months of testing positive for the virus, according to an Oxford University-led study that suggests action is needed to mitigate the mental health toll of the pandemic. Paul Harrison, author of the study and professor of psychiatry at the United Kingdom's University of Oxford, said doctors and scientists around the world urgently need to investigate the causes and identify new treatments for mental illness after COVID-19. The study, published in the Lancet Psychiatry Journal, analyzed electronic health records of 69 million people in the United States, including more than 62,000 cases of COVID-19. The findings are likely to be the same for those afflicted by COVID-19 worldwide, the researchers said. Simon Wesley, an expert in emergency preparedness and response from King's College London, suggests these findings do fit with observations seen in previous pandemics. However, it is possible the viral infection may be somewhat causally connected to these mental health conditions. As he said, COVID-19 affects the central nervous system and so might directly increase subsequent disorders. But this research confirms that is not the whole story, and that this risk is increased by previous ill health. It was also found that people with a pre-existing mental health diagnosis were 65% more likely to be diagnosed with COVID-19 than those without. According to Dr. Max Tacky, one of the authors of the analysis, this findings was unexpected and needs investigation. In the meantime, having a psychiatric disorder should be added to the list of risk factors for COVID-19, while researchers also noted that there currently is no known physiological mechanism to causally connect COVID-19 with an increased risk of psychiatric disorders. But researchers from Oxford clearly stated the effects detected in the study are significant enough to demand urgent investigation, saying regardless of the cause, it seems clear COVID-19 will inevitably trigger higher rates of mental illness in the coming months and years, and healthcare services must be prepared. Professor Harrison emphasized services need to be ready to provide care, especially since our results are likely to be underestimates of the actual number of cases. We urgently need research to investigate the causes and identify new treatments. Kath?
Thank you, Marvy, reporting live from Australia. The Department of Medical Sciences, or DMS, in Thailand has revealed a COVID-19 testing kit for a lower cost compared to imported testing kits. The testing kit's technology is to be passed on to a private sector to reduce capital costs to slightly over 100 baht or 160 pesos compared to 300 to 500 baht or 480 to 800 pesos per unit for imported testing kits. It uses immunochromatography to test plasma and blood from a patient's fingertip and has an accuracy rate of 90%. Interim Director General of DMS, Dr. Supakit Sirilak, said that after decoding COVID-19 DNA with collaboration with researchers from China, the DMS is able to produce real-time RT-PCR kits, a testing apparatus for the coronavirus accepted by the World Health Organization. It is currently pending registration with the country's Food and Drug Administration and will be used with 60,000 Thais once processed. It is also aimed to be used for international tourists under the special tourist visa and will be particularly important once the quarantine period for tourists is reduced from 14 to 10 days. And those are the reasons behind the news here in Thailand and in other parts of the globe. Back to you, William.
Thank you very much. Kath Dumaraos reporting live from Bangkok, Thailand.
And those are the reasons behind the news, November 11, 2020. I am Harleen Delgado.
Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I'm Angelo Castro III.
Because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.